Happy to share with you our next visit in Beaufort. Before that, I would like to have a recap. First, we started from Maryland, and then to Charleston we took a flight which took around 2 hours. There we hired a car. With the help of that, we were able to see the entire Charlestown in around 2.5 days. Then we started going towards Beaufort. So Beaufort is a town which is called as the happiest seaside town in USA, and then it has been designated as the historic, the entire town has been designated as the historic district, and it has got buildings which are called as antebellum architecture. And it is very interesting, you know, that at the time of Civil War many other towns were destroyed by the Union militia, but this town was just occupied by them, and they did not attack it, or they did not damage it. That is one of the interesting things about this town. And then from that, while going to this town, we saw around 2-3 places. One is called the Cow Interpretive Center, which is one of the big rice plantations of that time. That is a big rich landowners or the plantation owners, they lived far away, and then they grew rice here with the help of the enslaved people from West Africa who were expert in growing the rice. And there only the slaves stayed, and once in a while the plantation owners used to visit them to check their work. And that was all marshland with the river flowing by, and they were subjected to lot of hurdles such as the alligators coming and attacking them, and snakes. And then whenever they grew indigo, their hands were completely, their skin was completely affected, and many of them died due to various diseases, and they did not have a proper doctor. And when they were brought from West Africa also, I read that many of them died in the ship itself due to plague and other unhygienic conditions. So the slaves lived here in a very pathetic state, and then they grew rice in the marshy land which was there in the plantation. And this was also like the other one, like the Dayton Hall and the Middleton Hall. This also had a swampy thing, marshy land with alligators and all at the side, and then the river and the long grass, etc. But that was a beautiful place because that was a habitat of many birds. And whenever we walked through that, my son-in-law had an app in the phone, and then they were able to identify which bird is giving that sound. It's all the latest technology with which all the youngsters are so used to, and we also were benefited by that. Next visit was Penn Center. The Penn School was established for the African Americans who were freed after the Civil War, for their emancipation, and then to teach them some skills so that they can earn their own living. That was a very emotional stop for us, and they did not allow us to take any photos. We watched a video and then we interacted with the person who was in charge of it, and that was very good information she shared with us. The whole of this Penn School was filled with photos and the letters written by those who studied there and those who worked there, and the artistic products made by them and how they developed their culture there. Everything was displayed, but we were not allowed to take photographs, so I am unable to share with you. On the whole, the Beaufort was a very beautiful town which was known for its Galaguchi culture, about which I will be talking later, and also it was known for its native food. But unfortunately, there was not even one Indian restaurant where we can have something, so we had to eat something called spanakopita, pizzas, etc. in the Athenian restaurants. Fine, but that was also enjoyable. It was a different kind of taste. Then after the Penn Center, we went to the beaches, and then we enjoyed the Lighthouse over there, about which I'll be talking in detail later. Now let me share some pictures of Beaufort. Beaufort is located on Port Royal Island, and it's one of the largest sea islands along the southeast Atlantic coast of the US. And then it is also known for rich African American heritage. And our hotel was along the river side of Broad River. It was a beautiful place where they had put some swings along the riverside so that people can sit and enjoy the sunrise and sunset. And we could see a lot of boats being harbored there. And it was such a beautiful sight to see in the morning and evening. We went for a walk around the riverside. And also we went for a walk along the town also. We just took a walk on the roads just to have a feel of Beaufort. And it had also the old architectural buildings as we saw in Charleston. And here is the old church which was built by the blacks after they were freed. It was a Baptist church built by the freed enslaved African Americans after the Civil War. Then we visited the street where Robert Small's house was located. He has a very important connection with American history, and he was born to an enslaved lady in Beaufort in 1839. At that, they were enslaved by one Mr. McKee. Robert Small's mother was Mrs. Lydia Polite, and he saw the horrors of slavery everywhere around him. So somehow he got himself educated, and then he became a pilot in the transport boat of the Confederates called the Planter. And he made a daring escape from the Confederate forces in Charleston Harbor and self-emancipated himself and his family and other enslaved crewmen. For that he was awarded $1,500 by the Union Army. With that money, again he came back to Beaufort, and then for $605 he bought the same Mickey house where he lived as a slave when it was auctioned. Because after the Civil War, many of the plantation owners and the house owners, they ran away out of fear of life. And so that is a beautiful example of a brave man. And we saw his house, his statue and his cemetery also along the side of the house. When he went and surrendered to the Union militia, he also took with him valuable military cargo. So for that only he was rewarded by the Union militia, and that was worth seeing, his house, his statue and the other things related to him. And we saw from outside the Beaufort National Cemetery commissioned by Abraham Lincoln. It was around 33 acres, I read. It was a burial ground for the Confederate as well as Union soldiers who were killed during the Civil War. Around 18,500 men and women were buried there. In all these monuments, we found the theme, remember the past, preserve the present and shape the future. The next place we visited was the Cow Interpretive Center, where it is a plantation where they grew the rice by the slaves who were brought from West African nations. As you can see in the map, it is shown there, from Ghana, Angola, etc. And they were separated from their families, their culture, their language, everything, and they were stacked like commodities in ships, and they were brought here. And then they were forced to work as enslaved people in the rice plantations. And then this was a very sad part. We can see in the above picture the hazards of rice production, how they affected the laborers who were working there. They were attacked by alligators, they were bitten by snakes and rats, and working in the swampy grounds all the time affected their skin, and they got a lot of skin diseases like that. Everything is mentioned there in the sheet above. When we visited this plantation, we saw it is a habitat of lot of birds. So we just walked quietly so as to hear the sounds of nature. It was such a good experience. It had lot of swamps, and in some places it was written that alligators, be careful. But we didn't see any this time. Snakes and other thing we did not see, and we were very careful to walk. And these are the Spanish moths which I mentioned earlier. They were called by this name because the Native Americans thought they looked like the beards of Spanish conquistadors. This information was given by my dear granddaughter. The Spanish moss and the resurrection ferns which are found on these big trees, they never act like parasites from the tree, and they only survive on the humidity from the air, and they take the nutrients from the air and also from the rainwater or from the dust in the air. That's what we heard. That is a speciality of South Carolina. We enjoyed walking in this plantation by hearing the nice chirping of the birds which were there on the trees. And we also saw some birds on top of the trees. This plantation is the habitat of swallow-tailed kites and bald eagles and osprey, etc. we heard. And also hundreds of naturalized tea plants are also growing there. In the 18th and 19th century, these are the rice fields. It's called Cow Interpretive Center, based on the sound made by the crows to call the other crows, like ka in India also. So based on that only this was named, we read. And see the swamps and see the huge trees there. Nature preserved at its best can be closely watched here in this plantation. It was once a part of several rice plantations and home to enslaved Africans who applied their technology and skills in agriculture to carve a series of rice fields for the plantation owners. Now just keep enjoying the silence and the chirping of the birds and enjoy the nature as we enjoyed that day. To sit quietly amongst the nature was like doing meditation and yoga there in the forest. It was so peaceful and nice to be there in that nature surrounded place. Now see the swampy ground surrounded by lots of trees and the pathways, and everything looked so good and we enjoyed the nature at its best. Then we visited Penn School. It's called Penn Center. It was established in 1862 as a non-profit organization in St. Helena Island, South Carolina. It was the first school in South for formerly enslaved West Africans. Now the African Americans at the very heart of Gala culture, surrounded by glimmering marshes and silvery Spanish mosses. And the person who started this was Miss Town and Miss Ellen Murray in 1862 for freed slaves to allow them to earn a living by teaching them skills as well as educating them. And some of the things what we read there, it was very emotional to read, or the letters written by those who were educated there, describing what difficulties they had to endure to travel and come and read in that institution. The person who was our guide there, she told us that she also studied there and now she is associated with that in various activities. This center was named after Mr. Quaker William Penn, who was born in England and then he came here as a person who supported religious toleration, and it has been named after him. Then we visited the beautiful Carolina beaches. It was quite warm and sunny that day and it was very shallow, but the waves were very beautiful and my granddaughters collected shells over there. It was such a good experience. Near that beach was the Lighthouse. It was called Hunting Island Lighthouse. It was built in 1859, again it was rebuilt in 1875. It was built in such a way that it can be dismantled and again built in another place. And the person who was taking care had also stayed near that lighthouse, and we visited his house and we read the note written by his wife. It was so sad. She had written that we had no neighbors and our children had no playmates and we had to live all in isolation near the lighthouse, and my husband was all the time taking care of the lighthouse so as to warn the ships of various hazards like sandbar, etc. near the coast. It was 136 foot tall. After seeing the lighthouse and beach, we just went to the room and relaxed, and next day was the kayaking experience which I am going to share with you in detail. It was our first kayaking experience in the broad river creek. First we all stood like soldiers. First we hesitated actually to go for that. Then my daughter encouraged us, "Mama, it is going to be fun, don't miss it. Please try, and anyhow we are going to be two in a kayak." Then we agreed. Then we started our first kayaking experience. For the first half an hour it was fun. We were just doing lelo, ilasa like that, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then after some time we started feeling so tired, and also whenever our kayak got stuck in the slush which was there in the sides of the creek, it was very difficult to pull it out to bring it to the main stream. We had fun watching the dolphins swimming by our side. and then whenever any speed boats passed by, the waves of water, they shook our kayak, and it was a bit scary, but still we had fun. And then at some point we became so tired, and our guide also told us that those who try to go and stand in those swampy areas which are full of oyster shells, which you see in the picture at the side, they were pulled inside like as if they are going into the quicksand. So we got a bit scared, and I could hear my husband from the other kayak with my daughter telling her, this is not good for your Rama's arms, as the doctor has warned not to strain her hands like that. And his concern filled words gave me extra strength to steer off. Our guide told us that these oyster shells act as a water filter, and the whole creek was filled with salt water. And then somehow we managed to reach the starting point after being towed for a short distance. Though it was a very tiring experience, still we enjoyed, and then we had a hearty laughter afterwards, exchanging notes of how everybody reacted while they were kayaking. It was a very fun family outing, and it's really a lifetime experience. After that we went to the hotel and then we relaxed. The place where we went for kayaking is called the Hilton Head Kayaking. There everything was named after Hilton Head like that. In the Penn Center, we were told that Beaufort is an important place for the Galaguchi culture. It was a culture developed by the enslaved West African people for communication. The Galla came from the word Angola, and the Gucci is the way how they twisted their tongues and then they developed their own dialect for communication. And I heard that every year, even now in Beaufort, they hold a fair in which they all assemble, and then they enjoy their culture, their dancing, their music, food, etc. They are the descendants of the enslaved people from West Africa. Now they are settled in USA as African American citizens here, and they all still preserve their culture and tradition by assembling, and then they follow the Galaguchi culture. And we also heard about the Penn Center, one more interesting information, that they were given $50,000 in 2019 for an oral history project to collect histories of civil rights workers who were with Martin Luther King, and that was used to develop the Penn Center, which is for the emancipation of those people who were brought from West Africa at the time of slavery. Then we relaxed at the hotel to go to Savannah the next day morning. I will be happy to share with you our Savannah trip also, and my sincere thanks to all of you for watching my videos, and kindly subscribe to